Okay. All right, good evening. We'll call the meeting to order at 7:06 p.m. And I ask that we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and Trish is here, so that's perfect. All right, so we'll move on to item number 3, which is public comment. We have one piece of public comment. Now, just as a note of clarification, this public comment came in at the end of last meeting. We were unable to get it in because of some technical difficulties. I commented on that back then. It was included in the minutes of the previous meeting, but we did say that we would make it available if it was resubmitted, which it was. So Roy, if you want to go ahead and read the public comment, and then we'll move forward to item number 4.
It's a letter from Brian Koskolowski, 130 Pearl Street. To the board, about a month ago, this board accepted the resignation from an elected official for a post for a small few people found offensive. Yet you have a member sitting on this board who has made offensive racial posts threatening the taxpayers of Seymour and their pets, along with a few sexually inappropriate posts. We do not need the hypocrisy of the National Democratic Party in small-town Seymour. I am therefore demanding the resignation of Selectman Bowen for these racist and threatening comments.
Okay, is there any other public comment that we have?
No, that I've received.
Okay, so with that, we'll move on to item number 4. Approved minutes from the September 1st, 2020 regular meeting. Can I have a motion to do so? Motion by Anne Marie, second by Trish. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Item number 5, first Selectmen's report. If I draw all of your attention to the capital plan, which was sent to all of you, I believe most of you got it today. So we had been holding on to the capital plan because of the COVID situation. One of the things that we had held back was this capital plan. Now, the capital plan is created every year during the annual budget summit. All of the town department heads come together. We give them essentially $300,000 to spend, and they determine amongst themselves how we're going to do that. So they all work together. We take their suggestions, we tailor it a little bit, and then that gets placed in front of the selectmen for final approval, as you all know. The capital lies with the selectmen. The Board of Finance only determines if it will or will not be funded. They did fund $300,000 in the fiscal year 21 budget for that. So the capital plan under forecasted fiscal year 2021, if everybody can go to that line, and I apologize if it came out printed the tall way as opposed to the long way, but we made some changes since that budget summit back in December, because there's a few things that we had initially spaced out to be paid over time, but through the hard work and effort of Doug Thomas, we were able to pay those things and actually still had a surplus in our capital account of about $270,000. So we're going to leave that there as the reserve, but we're going to move forward with the purchasing of this. So the finance department software for $130,663 and the community services bus for $103,980. Those were scheduled to be paid over the next few years. Excuse me, but again, those have all been paid off, so that freed up money. We'll start with Public Works. Initially, we were going to put the first of, start the process of purchasing new dump trucks. They cost about $200,000 each, give or take. The plan was to purchase one in fiscal year 21 and one in fiscal year 23. That was the original plan. However, based on input that we received from Tony DePrimo, their ability to keep their fleet up, the fact that we make constant reinvestments into their fleet, the $90,000 that we put aside every year for them to purchase a new 550. So those are the smaller, rack body plow trucks. There's no need for that this year. The fleet is in good shape. So what Tony wants to do is to take that $90,000 and essentially redo 2 cabs on 2 of the dump trucks. So what that's going to do is basically make them brand new. So he said that we could push out another year. So we will start the purchasing of those 2 brand new dump trucks in fiscal year 22 and 24. This is a significant deal because maintaining and keeping this fleet of trucks is very difficult at $200,000 each. Tony has done a great job in this. These trucks don't get a lot of use. These are the major plow trucks. So it's important that we keep up on these. We saw in that freak snowstorm that we had a couple years ago, those were the only trucks that were actually out on the roads. Those were the only trucks that could actually move snow. And, we only have a handful of them. So by being able to maintain the ones that we have and then consistently replace these bigger ones, puts our public works department in a very good position. So that's a tip of the cap to Tony and to those guys down there. The scale with the Easy Pass system, again, we had planned to purchase it over 2 years. We have not made the purchase yet. We held back on that because of everything going on with COVID. It's labor intensive to install that. The plan was to install it in the spring of 2020, but obviously with everything going on, we held that back. So Tony now will be looking to make that purchase in the spring of 21. We'll obviously have all the cash that's necessary. Skipping down to the police department, the $10,000 is a grant match for them to get new bulletproof vests. Obviously, we want to make sure that our officers are protected. And something that I threw in just last week when we were putting this together, because of the money that we freed up with the laws, the new, laws that have been passed and go into effect in July of 21, and listening to some of the conversations of the Board of Police Commissioners, obviously there's going to be a need for dash and body cams in some way, shape, or form. This $50,000 that I put in is more of a placeholder. I don't have a definitive number. I was working with Commander Fabiano. He was trying to get as much information for me as quickly as he could, but this would be the hardware costs. The hardware costs are the cheapest part of this puzzle. For fiscal year 22's budget, we're going to have to budget for storage. That could be very expensive depending on the FOI rules that stay attached to this and things like that, but I at least wanted to have a placeholder in there. The Board of Police Commissioners did say at some point they would be coming to our board and the Board of Finance to ask for money at this. They didn't put a timeline on it, but I'd rather have some money in there just in case. Worst case scenario, we don't need it and the money's available for another project that comes up. Fire Marshal's vehicle. This will allow us to buy a new Fire Marshal's vehicle in cash. It had been slated to be purchased for next year, but again, because of some freeing up in the capital plan, we're able to purchase that. Now the current vehicle is being held together by duct tape and bubble gum. It's kind of old. The previous Fire Marshal had brought it to our attention prior to him leaving. The current Fire Marshal has been trying to keep it going as best as he could, but it's to the point now where it needs to be replaced. Skipping down to communications and emergency management, we need a new town hall generator. That's been in the planning stages for about the last year or so. This will give us the opportunity to get that one. The current generator that we have running town hall was a generator that I got at an auction used from the town of Orange. It served us very well, but it's old and it's tired. So it's time that we make that investment. And then there's an $8,000 communications generator. Some of you are aware of this. There is one that runs one of our cell towers that's in the woods. It needs to have gas constantly put in it. It requires our custodians to essentially lug 15 gallons of gasoline into the woods. It seems like every couple hours. to keep this thing running. This generator will take that off the table. It'll provide better security to our communications and obviously keep them from having to do that. We had talked about elevators, the need for elevators at the community center, the library, and town hall. At this point, we're just going to replace the elevator here at town hall. Obviously, the community center, with it not being open, we're not going to be putting any money into that building. At this point, it just doesn't make sense. And the elevator at the library seems to be holding up and working fine. So it's the recommendation of Tim Connors to do the elevator at town hall first, leave a placeholder in for the library or in the community center one in future years. PC replacement, we spend $5,000 a year replacing PCs. We do that in mass with the Board of Education, so we get a very good deal. The server cluster for $24,000. That is something that Rob Dyer has been pushing for the last 2 years. For those of you that realized during the storm, our email system and our town systems went down. That was because a generator at the high school went down. It took the whole system down with it. By adding this server cluster, and I'm not a computer guy, as you all know, but that won't happen anymore. So we're going to have multiple servers all working together. And that all of that totals up to $292,271. So I wanted to present this to you tonight to give all of you the opportunity to absorb it. Take your notes, ask me any questions you have over the next 3 weeks, because it's a 5 Tuesday month in September. The goal will be to vote on this on Tuesday, October, bear with me one second. Tuesday, October 6th. Again, I didn't want to just put this in front of you and then ask you to vote on it. So I want to give everybody the time to ask any questions, do any research, and we'll go from there. Okay, so with that, that closes the first Selectmen's report. Okay, item number 6, discussion, take action regarding the Equality Act. So I'm going to read a resolution, and then we will go from there. So at the town of Seymour, whereas members of this Board of Selectmen support the rights, freedoms, and equality of lesbians, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, LGBTQ+ community, and whereas the modern history of the LGBTQ+ community started with individuals who took a stand for human rights and dignity at the Stonewall Inn in New York City on June 28, 1969, and whereas decisive moments in the history are the story of the LGBTQ+ community and have put our nation on a positive course to achieving full equality, and whereas individuals of this town who are LGBTQ+ have made and continue to make vital contributions to every aspect of our town, including in the fields of education, law, health, science, business, research, economic development, architecture, fashion, sport, technology, music, civil rights, politics, and whereas the United States Supreme Court in 2015 recognized the marriage of same-sex couples under the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, and therefore be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen of the town of Seymour, 1, recognizes that LGBTQ rights are human rights and are constitutionally protected. 2, recognizes that all residents should be treated fairly and equally, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. And 3, agrees that the town of Seymour must strive to ensure that the promise of equality is realized for all. Now, therefore, be it further resolved by the Board of Selectmen of the town of Seymour that we hereby declare our endorsement and lend our support for the federally proposed Equality Act, House Resolution 5 of the 119th Congress. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution as presented? So we have Chris made the motion, Anne Marie seconded it. Under discussion. This was sent to me by a person that I know who has been putting this around the state looking for support from different towns and cities. I believe we will be the 4th or 5th community in Connecticut that has approved this. Assuming the board is approves this resolution, We'll be putting this on official town letterhead, and then we will forward it out to the 5 members of Congress and also our 2 senators, just to let them know that we stand behind this federal law, or the potential of this becoming federal law, I should say. So with that, I'll open it up to any comments. Just raise your hand just so I can kind of pull you out. I don't skip over anybody. Does anybody want to make, Al, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I support this resolution. I support this becoming federal law. The only caveat I have is something that's currently going on right now in the state of Connecticut in the track and field realm, where there are a handful of transgender athletes who were cisgender males. And by cisgender, the definition of that is it's the lexicon of this issue, denoting or relating to a person whose sense of personality, identity, and gender corresponds with their birth sex. So I'm talking about people who were born male or female. So that's what I mean by cisgender. I support the cisgender females who compete in Connecticut winter and spring track events against the transgender athletes and with the transgender athletes. While I support everything else about this issue, I do hope that this issue is resolved soon, because I do not feel that it is fair to cisgender females to be competing against biologically born males in track events. Other than that, I support this wholeheartedly. This is an issue that is going to go through the courts. This is a lawsuit that has been filed. It's currently being battled right now. But other than that, I support I support this resolution. But I just wanted to make sure people knew where I stood with that track issue, because my own daughter has competed against the transgender athletes. And while I'm all for everybody competing, I just feel that there's a fundamental unfairness to that particular area. Thank you for an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Al. Chris, go ahead.
I feel obligated to point out, I respectfully disagree with my colleague, Mr. Bruno, on this. Based on the auspices that when people decide to transition from their biological sex, it's not just as simple as putting on different clothing. They take, if you're transitioning from male to female, you take estrogen supplements. Those supplements narrow your bone density, among other physical changes. Those supplements make the body, while I understand where Mr. Bruno's objection to this comes from, the concern is not nearly as, the reality is not nearly as strong as it is stated to be. So I definitely understand the concern, but if we are going to grant equal rights, they need to be equal for everybody. That can't be determined, especially because from my knowledge, most of the objection to this is in sports like wrestling, where they have weight classes. 150 means 150. I respectfully disagree with this assertion, because it is a lot deeper than it is being made out to be when somebody decides to transition from male to female.
Well, and Al, before we come back to you,
I'd just like to quickly respond to something. Chris misquoted me. I never said it was just an issue of putting on different clothing, end quote. I never said that.
I understand that. I acknowledge
what
that.
the issues are as an attorney. I've read the case law. I've read this lawsuit, and that's how I feel. And you're entitled to your opinion, just like I am. But please do not put words in my mouth. That's all I want to say.
I acknowledge that Mr. Bruno did not say it was an issue of just simply putting on clothes. That was.
Thank you, because that is demeaning, and that's against everything that the transgender people want, and that's the purpose of the resolution. So.
Right, but the changes that I note that people go through when they transition are critical to this issue. And since they seem to be critical to your assertion of the law and how they could affect the sports on the field, I felt that needed to be pointed out. In no way am I implying that you said that, nor am I implying that you're being anything but respectful.
Okay.
I want that on record.
Okay, thank you.
all right, any other thoughts, comments? No? Emery, that itch could have been construed as a hand raise, but I know it wasn't. Bob Finley's now praying. Van Hagen is laughing. And Trisha's watching TV again. So with that, I'm only kidding. Just trying to bring a little levity into this. All right, so since there's no other comments, I'll just end. I think this is an important thing that we're undertaking. I hope that all of the board members support this. I think that regardless of political affiliation, people are who they are. It should be about the goodness of the person, not about who they love or anything like that. And I just think something like this, I would encourage my peers, other mayors and first selectmen across the state of Connecticut to, also take this resolution on, put it in front of their boards of selectmen, boards of aldermen, whatever it is. This is something that I think should be unanimous across the state, that we show this support. I just think is the right thing for us to be doing in this day and age. So with that, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? The chair votes aye. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, everyone. So Rory, if we could put this on letterhead tomorrow and get this out to the 7 members of our federal delegation, that would be very good. Okay, item number 7, discussion, take possible action regarding Ordinance Committee recommendations. We had some conversation at our last meeting about some different ordinances that we forwarded on to the Ordinance Committee. The Ordinance Committee met last night, I believe about 8 o'clock or so. So they may have just finished that meeting and jumped right onto this one, who knows. Rich was there. I believe it was Trish, it was Anne Marie, it was Bob and Rob, along with Rich. So with that, Anne Marie, why don't you give us an update about what you discussed, where you kind of stand with the ordinances that were emailed out to everybody. Rich can fill in, and then we will go from there.
Talking about the Ordinance Committee, right?
Yes, please.
All right. So we discussed the WPCA. I'll let Mr. Rich discuss, Attorney Rich discuss that, because I always mess up his last name. Everybody's correcting me on it. Go ahead, Rich.
I'll be happy to. So as you know, as all of you know, in looking at Connecticut General Statute 7-246A, there is a requirement that the WPCA be formed by an ordinance, and that not more than 1/2 of the membership shall expire in any 1 year. So you have to tier, if you will, you have to tier the terms of office in order to comply with state law. So what we did is we prepared that draft ordinance that you see in front of you, and essentially A, B, and D are verbatim out of the charter. Those are all out of the charter with a little bit of cleaning up, in the sense that under the who shall be administrative appointments of the first selectman, then I put in the phrase pursuant to the Seymour Town Charter, because now we're in the town code. The other document was in fact in this language was in fact in the charter. So with the exception of that, so what did we change? Well, we changed the term of office. So we made it for 5 members. We have 3-year terms so that we can comply with state law in terms of tiering the membership. And we start out with the first being appointed for a little over a year. And then the following year, 2 are up, and the following year after that, 2 more are up for reappointment. So that complies with state law, we believe. And this will correct that deficiency and allow the Seymour WPCA to exist wholly in compliance with Connecticut general statutes. So the next step would be to send this out for a public hearing, and that has to be done in connection with the Seymour Town Charter 12.12, and Rory is familiar with that. We have to advertise and we have to get it out at least, a certain a period of time. There's a 5-day requirement. There's a 10-day requirement. We have to comply with that. It's a little tricky, but we've done it many times before, so we can get that out. And that's about all I have to say on this. It actually came together fairly well.
So Rich, just for the sake of mechanics,
Yep.
if we can put this in at our meeting on October 6th, we can hold a public hearing
Yes.
to allow folks to weigh in on it.
Yes.
Would we be able to approve it
No.
on October 6th? So we'd have to take action again, have another public hearing,
Yes. The exact language, if I may.
and then have the 28 days or 21 days?
Yeah, and then you have the 21 days later for it to take effect. Exactly.
So basically, we're looking at November 1st for it to really take place.
Yes.
Yeah, early November, which is good. It's kind of the timeline that we had talked about
Mhm.
anyway.
It is. Yes.
So, I mean, that's so good job to the committee and to Rich for getting this going. So Rich will work with Rory. Assuming there is no additional questions or comments from the board, I didn't mean to just skip over that, so I apologize. Bob Finley, go ahead.
No, I think what I like about how this came together is we didn't change anything in the chart. I think that's the most important part, that we added the terms as required and we're doing it through ordinance, but the charter, the depth of what was written in the charter still remains the same. So I think that's really important. Makes it a little
agreed.
easier.
Agreed. So that's a good job by everybody. So I'll have Rory. Al? Bruno,
I
go ahead.
just wanted to make sure everybody knows who's on that ordinance committee. Can we just make sure folks know that?
I said that before. It's Anne Marie, it's Bob Finley, and it's Rob Van Agen.
All right, sorry, that's what I thought. I wanted to make sure everybody knew that. My apologies if I missed that.
Nope, not a problem. So Rory will work with Rich to get the proper notifications out. We will have a public hearing on November 6th prior to our next Board of Selectmen meeting. We'll get that all taken care of.
October 6th?
October 6th is our next Board of Selectmen meeting.
You said November
So-
6th.
Oh, I apologize. October 6th. 3 weeks from tonight.
So the next ordinance we looked at was the noise ordinance. And we all came to the conclusion is we need to kick this back. We want to see what other towns are doing as well, because it's kind of hard to measure out. We know how to measure noise, but how do we measure noise at a decibel level if, say, a band was playing music? So we want to make sure we look at what our surrounding towns around us are doing to make sure we're in line with what they are doing. We know that the garbage trucks cannot pick up before 6 a.m. We discussed that in our public work meeting as well. We know construction work can't start before 6 a.m. unless, as Rich stated, you're working on a state highway going through your yard, right? But we want to see what other towns are doing on that. And I think that was a good thing between Rob and Bob that we figured out to look around. So we didn't decide that, well, 10 o'clock, you have to shut the music off or turn it down to a certain level. So we just want to check what other towns are doing. So we're in line, as I said 5 times, sorry.
No, that's okay.
As far as the nonprofit assessment, you wanted me to go through everything we talked about, right? Or
Yes,
no?
please.
Okay.
Yes, please. No, give an update. Absolutely.
As far as a nonprofit assessment, Rich is going to look into that and get back to us on it to make sure that we are in line with doing what is right and not what we think is right due to the laws and, taxes and filing certain things and making sure it's not filed and what happens if they don't file their, I forgot what the name of that thing was.
Quadrennial.
Quadrennial.
That thing before
That's right.
Kurt knows what that is.
Quadrennial. Yeah.
the quadrennial, to make sure that they file it. And if they don't file it, what do? I brought up about making sure the assessor sends maybe a registered certified letter to them so they can't say, oops, I forgot. but we thought it best to have Rich look at it and come back to us and give us some advice on that one. And then we have the department.
Anne Marie, you muted yourself.
Thank you. I saw Chris raising his hand.
Yep, you're back.
Thanks. We looked at the Board of Fire Chiefs to add deputy chief instead of just the fire chief and 3 assistants. It will be the fire chief, the deputy fire chief, an assistant, and assistant. This way they have the chain of command, not only at a fire scene, but off of a fire scene. If Mike's out, it's not, you know, assistant 1, it's assistant 2. We're just labeling it that way. That came from the police commissioners.
Fire commissioners.
Fire commissioners,
Yep.
right, Rich? So we're going to push that forward as well.
Mhm.
We talked about the tax abatement kickback for the retired 65 years of older and at least 25 years of service. So they have to be 65 years of age and have done 25 years in the town of Seymour's fire department, fire police, or they said emergency medical technician in there. Rich wants to look at exactly the emergency medical technician, correct?
Yes.
And we want to ensure that it's for Seymour residents who have served in the Seymour Town Fire Department for 25 years, not somebody who moved to Seymour but served in Derby or served in Ansonia. They must serve in our town.
And we wanted to get some idea from the fire department and from the different groups. How many total are we talking about? We're not quite sure what they're looking at. How many would be eligible?
Okay. Well, that's good. I know that's something that they've been talking, the firemen have been talking about for a while, because you have some of those guys that have devoted, guys and women, I shouldn't exclude the women because we have a lot of women firefighters now, that have devoted, 25, 30, 40 years of their life to the Seymour Fire Department, are now physically unable to hit all of the marks necessary, but are still as active as they possibly could be. They're showing up at the breakfasts and the fundraisers and things like that. So I think it's a great thing that you 3 are undertaking this to try to reward those people who have donated so much time to the town. In the grand scheme of things, it's really not much that it's costing us. It's substantially cheaper than a professional fire department. So
Absolutely.
it's certainly in our best interest to keep the volunteers as happy as we possibly can. And so I think it's a good work.
The next one we looked at was the fire commissioners wanted a tax abatement committee. We weren't quite sure what that meant. We thought maybe it was like a third person or an audit looking at it to make sure this one who said they made the calls really made the calls, or they really did perform the duty they said they were going to perform. So we want to kick that back to the fire commissioners to give us a little bit more detail and to go from there. We plan on having our next meeting September 29th and 2020, and we want to have the tax assessor there, and we want to have the fire commissioners there as well, so that they can give us a little bit more detail as to what they want.
Okay. Sounds good. So you're going to meet on the 29th, so you'll be able to report to us on the 6th, which is really good. Just remind the fire commissioners that if they're all going to show up to file an agenda, just to be on the safe side, so we don't have any issues or concerns.
Well, I think we were going to speak to them, have Rory send them an email or a letter, and then have them report, have one of them come to the meeting. I don't need to have all 3 of them come to the meeting.
All right, perfect. Good.
Right, Bob and Rob?
Yep, all through. Actually, Rob, Bob, and Rich are all nodding their heads. So, all right, so did that cover all the ordinances that you guys
I think,
went through?
I think Anne Marie mentioned it, and I think it went out, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it went out in the packet, the late packet this afternoon, a draft ordinance dealing with the duties of the deputy fire chief.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if you want, you can send that, that is a new section completely. And then there are revisions to section 624 and 625. If you wanted to send those out for a public hearing, you could get the jump on that too. Or you could hold it up until we finish all the fire department work. It's up to you folks.
Okay.
You probably want to do
Trish?
that all in one lump, I'm guessing, right, Rich?
You could, because we're probably going to be doing other things. I would expect some sort of tax abatement, ordinance we'll be working on, and we'll probably put something together on that. And some of the other things they've asked, although we don't understand what the committee was, we'll figure out what that's all about too.
Kurt, was there any more ordinance, in speaking with Clay, one of the fire commissioners, he had mentioned terms, and I didn't see term limits, and I didn't see anything in there. Did they send you anything, even if it was an email that maybe Rory didn't get?
If we didn't get it, I don't know. Rory took a folder off my desk the other day to go through,
Okay.
just to make sure that it didn't get, because I have an ordinance file.
Okay.
But I don't believe there was anything that was in there. I know that those are conversations that I've absolutely had with Clay on that, and something that they've been talking about, particularly where the chief is, generally only been 2 terms. I believe Chief Lombardi is on his 4th term, if I'm not mistaken. But we had some back and forth in a very good way, about the value of having consistency in a position like that, as opposed to, chiefs turning over every year or 2. I've been here 10 years. I believe I've had 4 chiefs, and Mike's been here for 4 of those years. So that would certainly be a good thing. And, maybe even if this ordinance committee wants to just entertain that themselves and solicit feedback from them directly, I think that would be a good thing. Trish.
I know this is a little petty, but on the duties of the deputy fire chief, the last line, I believe that should be to ensure, EN instead of IN.
Yes.
Somebody's getting fired somewhere.
Sorry, I'm a stickler for grammar, and I'll tell you, funnily isn't even a word. Well, how do you like that?
Yeah.
I was staring at it says chief in these documents so much that I actually started to question, like, it is IE, right? But because it looked funny, but yeah.
So we'll make the change to ENSURE as opposed to INSURE.
Yeah.
So.
Correct.
All right, so Rich, do we need a motion to move the WPCA ordinance as well as the deputy chief ordinance and section 624 and 625 forward to public hearing?
Well, I think it couldn't hurt to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that would be a good thing if that's the pleasure of the body.
Okay. All right, so then at this point, I will entertain a motion to move forward to public hearing, recommendations from the Ordinance Committee regarding establishing the Water Pollution Control Authority for the town of Seymour, the duties of the Deputy Fire Chief, as well as updates to section 624 and 625. I have a motion to do so. We have Bob Finley and Trish. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much to the Ordinance Committee for getting this going. and we will get all of the communications out for a public hearing on the 6th. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to item number 8, which is executive session. Executive session, we're going to discuss 3 things. We're going to discuss the police union contract. We're going to discuss the HR director's contract, and we are going to discuss the operations director's contract. Going into or being invited into executive session will be Town Council Rich Paterla and Warren Holcomb, who is here, as well as Chief of Staff Rory Burke. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session at 7:47 p.m. Motion by Chris, second by Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. All right, so Rory, if you can put everybody in the waiting room. I'm not sure where Hulk went.
Well,